Hello Golems, this is Damien from the Paper Golems Patreon, and we are presenting a behind the scenes work in progress video of the line art for one of our miniatures for the 2020 July core miniature set, which is Golem of Thrones, essentially a kind of fantasy reworking of some of the popular Game of Thrones characters, starting with one of my favorites, Brienne, the Beauty of Tarth. We are doing essentially a Firbolg warrior, could be a paladin or fighter, and you can see I like to start with the face. For me, the face is kind of a core anchor to any of the illustrations that I do. It really helps sort of set the tone and sets the kind of the rest of the stance and the pose of the body once I get that kind of expression right. Now, of course, Brienne is famously ugly, inverted commas, and I kind of wanted to not make her kind of a classic beauty, but I just couldn't help it. She's kind of turned out really cute as far as I'm concerned, but I have a soft spot for Brienne, so I think I can live with that. You can see that I kind of clean up my line work as I'm going along. I usually kind of hit an entire area, like say the hair here, and then go through and sort of clean up all the edges, and I pick out the corners and kind of shave off any kind of little parts where I've kind of gone over the line. That's the beauty of digital. You can do your cleanups a lot more easily than you ever could doing them by hand. So here we're sort of like, you can see I basically sort of tend to work from the foreground backwards. It's kind of, I'm not sure whether that's typical of other artists, but I'll typically draw what's in front and then try and work on what's behind. So you can see belt buckles, arms, that kind of thing. You can see I'm doing a bit of a leaf motif, I imagine as a Firbolg knight, that she probably still has some sort of connection to the forests. Obviously with a paper miniature you can't go into too much detail, but I do like to throw in a few little tidbits like that when I can. Now here's a little trick that I've done, you've seen me possibly do with chains. Rather than doing lots of little circles or fine line work, like those studs on the quilted skirt, I have done a sort of a dot and then erase the middle. Now you might have just seen, now I can sort of talk about this because this is what I'm doing here as well. You can see me getting really annoyed with this greave with the, particularly with those chevrons, trying to get them sort of getting into the right angle and looking right, because it's kind of a funny angle I've got going there with the forearm. Anyway, one of the issues you have with a paper miniature is, of course, with front and back, things that are sort of sticking out, hands and feet and that kind of thing, they have to be the same size on the left and the right, because when you flip the miniature, if you use the normal foreshortening techniques that you would as an artist, where like a hand is bigger in the foreground than it is in the background, when you flip the miniature it actually doesn't work. It looks kind of weird. So you'll see a few things where I am often starting to draw something on the left and then I'll try and redo it on the right using the existing reference from before. Once again, you can see, try to use little tricks with guidelines. I want to make sure the scabbard for a sword is nice and straight, so I've done like a little guideline behind it. And also you can see that sometimes I'll sort of jump back and forth with the drawing. I got really annoyed with this forearm, so I decided to just go and do the sword scabbard, and then eventually I got a little bit more brave and came back and redid it. So you can see here once again talking about trying to get things on the left and right looking the same. I'm really making sure that shoulder guard is looking as close as possible in proportions to the one on the left, or I guess her right. So yes, as we are sort of moving now, we're kind of almost finished the piece. So I sort of will be going back and forth from one area to another, cleaning up little bits and pieces that I've either missed or come back to. Now this is of course a major part. I wanted to give her just a really nice simple sword. We've got quite a lot going on in the armor, so I didn't want to go too crazy with especially a small detail. And you can see once again I'm using a few tricks that you can do with digital, mirroring and flipping objects from left to right. That way I can get my sword looking nice and proportionally correct. You can see me doing a lot of pushing and pulling with the shapes, just trying to get it right. When I get towards the end of the project, I'm often kind of get a little bit more fiddly with a few of the bits and pieces, and that's can often be a little bit more time consuming. Here you can see that I am spending probably way too much time on a sword, especially when it's meant to be simple. What am I doing? What am I doing here? Well, anyway, Well, I guess with hard objects like this, with organic objects, you can get away with more. With hard objects like this, when you make a mistake or you've got things that don't quite look right, they're a lot more obvious. So that is, there we go. That's the justification for me fiddling around with that sword way too much. So here you go. I'm almost done, and that is it. Well, I hope you really enjoyed this behind the scenes commentary, especially Tiny Toxic Tears who suggested this. And hopefully we'll do this again with one of our other drawings.